I never thought a woman twice my age would turn my life upside down, but the moment I saw her, I knew I was in trouble. She was bold, unrelenting, and so damn alluring it was impossible to resist. What started as harmless conversations on a hiking trail turned into something I could not control, a whirlwind of forbidden desire and raw emotion. I tried to pull away, but she was not about to let me go without a fight. What happened next? Let us just say, I crossed a line I swore I never would. I had come to Jackson, Wyoming, to disappear. My name is James, and at 35, I had managed to ruin most of what mattered in my life. My career as an architect was on hold, my relationships were a mess, and I had no idea who I was anymore. The mountains were supposed to help me find that person again. They were supposed to be quiet, untouched, and safe. I never expected her. The first time I saw her, I was sketching by the river. I had found a quiet spot where the sound of rushing water drowned out my thoughts. That was the goal, to drown everything out. Then her dog came barreling down the trail, all wagging tail and endless enthusiasm. "Max, slow down," a voice called out. It was a woman's voice, low, smooth, and commanding in a way that made me glance up to spite myself. She came into view a moment later, and I immediately felt like I was in trouble. She was older than me, maybe late 50s or early 60s, but she carried herself in a way that made it impossible to notice her age first. Her auburn hair was loose, catching the sunlight, and her eyes were dark, curious, and direct. She looked like she had walked straight out of a novel. "He is friendly," she said with a smile, her gaze locking onto mine. "Good thing," I replied, trying to focus on her dog, who was now nudging my hand for attention. She stepped closer. "Beth," she said, extending her hand. "That is Max, and I assume he is about to ruin your day." I took her hand, and the warmth of her touch caught me off guard. "James," I said, pulling back more quickly than I meant to. "And he is fine. Better company than most people." Her laugh was quick, genuine, and too loud for the peaceful quiet around us. It threw me off. She did not seem like someone who would be walking alone through the wilderness, but the slight hesitation in her laugh, the crack, told me she was carrying something heavy. I recognized it because I was carrying something heavy too. I did not expect to see her again, but she showed up the next morning. And the morning after that. She always acted surprised to see me, even though we both knew better. "Funny running into you again," she said one day, wearing a fitted fleece jacket that hugged her curves in a way that made it hard not to look. "You must love this spot." "It is quiet," I replied. "That is why I like it too." Her voice was smooth but careful. She lingered after that, asking me about my sketches. When I mentioned that I was an architect, she smiled in a way that felt too knowing. "I love architecture," she said, her voice dipping into something more personal. "My late husband was obsessed with it. I always wondered what it would have been like to design something lasting, something that mattered." She said it casually, but I caught the way her voice tightened around the word late. I realized then that she was not just here for the mountains. She was here for the same reason I was, to forget. That was how it started. Casual conversations by the river, moments where I thought I was imagining the way her hand brushed mine when she reached for something, or the way her smile lingered just a little too long. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself it would pass. But deep down, I knew better. She was not going to let this pass. Beth was not just another person passing through the trails. She was deliberate in her movements, her choices. She was there because I was there. I knew at the moment I caught her watching me from the corner of her eye while pretending to admire the river. It should have been unsettling, but it was not. It was magnetic. That morning, she wore a navy sweater that clung to her frame, and her hair fell just slightly undone, like she had been in a rush. But nothing about her was rushed. She approached slowly, deliberately, as if testing how close she could come before I would pull away. "You are sketching again," she said with a smile, her voice steady and conversational. "You must be good at it to come out here every day." I shrugged. "It keeps my hands busy." Her gaze flicked down to my hands, lingering for a moment longer than it should have. "Hands are important," she said softly, her tone dipping into something that made the air between us feel heavier. they tell you everything about a person. I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced a laugh to break the tension. You must have a gift for reading people. She tilted her head, studying me with that same unsettling calm. Not everyone. Just the ones worth reading. It was a bold thing to say, but it was not surprising. By then, I had already realized that Beth was not afraid of boldness. She had a way of stepping just close enough to the line to make you wonder if she would cross it. And the worst part? I wanted her to. Later that week, I found myself on the same trail, but Beth was nowhere to be seen. I should have felt relieved, but the absence gnawed at me. I told myself it was better this way, that she deserved someone who was not carrying as much emotional wreckage as I was. But when I reached the river and saw her sitting there on the boulder where I usually sketched, my chest tightened in a way that felt like both dread and relief. Taking my spot? I asked, keeping my tone light. She turned, her eyes lighting up as if she had been waiting for me. I was wondering if you would show up. I froze. The way she said it, without pretense, without hesitation, made it clear that this was not just a chance meeting. She was here for me. You do not hold back, do you? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She stood and took a step closer. I spent too many years holding back. I do not see the point anymore. The honesty in her voice disarmed me, but it also made me feel exposed. She did not just see me. She was studying me, peeling back layers I had carefully built to keep the world out. As the days passed, we began walking together more often. It was not something we planned, but it happened. She would talk about her late husband, Alan, with a mix of fondness and grief that made my chest ache. I did not want to think about how it would feel to lose someone like that. But Beth did not dwell on loss. She was alive in a way I envied. She noticed every detail, the way the light hit the river, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the sound of distant birdsong. She made me notice those things too. One afternoon, as we reached the end of the trail, she stopped abruptly and turned to face me. "James," she said, her voice steady but soft, "why are you really here?" Her question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on her that I had not stopped to think about what I was giving away. "Why does it matter?" I replied, deflecting. "It matters because I think you are running from something. And I think I am part of what you are running toward." Her words hung in the air between us, sharp and undeniable. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but I could not. She was right. Beth's words hit like a stone skipping across water, each one rippling further into places I did not want to acknowledge. She was not wrong. I was running. From my career, from my past, and now from her. But every time I saw her, I wanted to stop. Every time she looked at me, I felt less like a broken man and more like someone who could matter again. "Beth," I said, my voice low, "you do not know me." "I know enough," she shot back, her dark eyes steady. "I know you are here, hiding in these mountains, sketching instead of living. I know you need this as much as I do." Her honesty unnerved me. I was used to people skirting around the truth, pretending they did not see the cracks. Beth leaned in, pressing against them, daring them to break. I sighed and rubbed the back of my neck, unsure of how to respond. She waited, her expression soft but unrelenting. Finally, I gave her the only answer I had. "Maybe I am running," I admitted. "But I do not know what you think I am running toward." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "That is the thing about running, James. Sometimes you do not know where you are headed until you get there." A few days later, the first snow arrived. It dusted the trails and softened the sharp edges of the world around us. Beth and I had fallen into a routine, meeting at the trailhead without discussing it beforehand, walking together as if we had been doing it for years. That day, the air felt heavier, the quiet between us more charged than usual. We stopped by the river, the water frozen in some places, rushing in others. Beth turned to me suddenly, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Come to my cabin tonight," she said. Her words caught me off guard. She had never been so direct before. I searched her face for hesitation, for doubt, but found none. I started, but she interrupted me. No excuses. Just come. Her voice was firm, but her eyes softened as she added, I do not want to spend another night staring at these walls, wishing someone was there. I think you feel the same way. I did. But going to her cabin felt like crossing a line I was not sure either of us was ready for. Still, when evening came, I found myself standing on her porch, the cold biting at my face as I raised my hand to knock. She opened the door before I could, her face lighting up with a mix of surprise and relief. Come in, she said, stepping aside. Her cabin was warm and inviting, the scent of pine and wood smoke filling the air. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow across the room. It was small but comfortable, worn leather chairs, thick blankets draped over them, and shelves lined with books and trinkets that told a story I wanted to know. We sat by the fire, sipping wine and talking about everything and nothing. For the first time, I saw a different side of Beth. She was not just bold and unrelenting, she was vulnerable, raw. She told me about Alan, how they had planned to retire together in the mountains, how his sudden death had shattered everything they had built. I thought I would never feel alive again, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And then I met you. Her words sent a shock through me. I wanted to say something, to match her honesty, but the weight of what she had just admitted left me speechless. Before I could find the right words, she leaned closer, her hand brushing mine. The touch was light, hesitant, but it set something off inside me. I turned to face her, my heart pounding. Beth, I said, my voice trembling slightly, what are we doing here? She smiled faintly, her eyes meeting mine. Whatever we want, she replied. Whatever feels right. I hesitated for only a moment before closing the space between us. The kiss was tentative at first, but it quickly deepened, the weight of everything we had both been holding back finally breaking. That night, we crossed a line. And I knew there would be no going back. The morning light seeped through the cabin's curtains, pale and unrelenting. I sat at the edge of Beth's bed, my feet on the cold wooden floor, my head heavy with thoughts I had been avoiding. Behind me, she stirred under the blankets, her breathing soft and steady. I should have felt regret. I should have felt panic. Instead, I felt something far more dangerous, peace. And that terrified me. You are quiet, her voice broke the silence, low and husky from sleep. I glanced over my shoulder. Her auburn hair was tousled, her face bare of any pretense. She looked content. Comfortable. I'm just thinking, I replied, my voice stiff. About what? She asked, sitting up and pulling the blanket around her shoulders. How could I tell her that I was thinking about how easily this could go wrong? How quickly I could mess up the one good thing I had found in years? Instead, I forced a small smile. About how you managed to get me out of my head last night, I said. She laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. It is a gift, she teased, but there was something in her eyes, something that told me she was studying me again, looking for cracks I did not want her to find. The next few days blurred together. We spent more time together on the trails, at her cabin, even in town when we both needed supplies. At first, it felt easy, natural, as if we had always been this close. But the more time I spent with Beth, the harder it became to ignore the weight of what we were doing. She deserved stability, someone who could offer her a future. I was not sure I could even offer her tomorrow. One evening, after another long walk along the river, she stopped suddenly and turned to face me. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. James, she began, her voice steady, what are we doing here? Her question mirrored the one I had asked her in front of the fire. But this time, I had no easy answer. Beth, I said, running a hand through my hair, I do not know what this is. I only know that I care about you. More than I should. She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. What does that mean? More than you should? It means I do not want to hurt you, I said, my voice rising slightly. I do not want to promise you something I cannot deliver. Her eyes flashed, and she stepped closer. Do you think I do not know what I am doing? Do you think I would have let this happen if I was not ready for it? Beth, I started, but she cut me off. No, she said firmly. You do not get to make this decision for me. If you want to leave, then leave. But do not stand here and tell me you care about me and then act like that is the problem. Her words hit hard, and for a moment, I could not speak. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but I knew she was not. She had been brave enough to let herself feel again. I was the one still running. That night, I sat alone in my cabin, staring at my unfinished sketches. The lines blurred together, meaningless and incomplete. Beth's voice echoed in my head, her words cutting through the noise. I thought about the way she had looked at me that first day by the river, the way she had reached for my hand in the firelight, the way she had broken through every wall I had put up without hesitation. For the first time in years, I stopped running. I picked up my coat, grabbed my keys, and stepped out into the cold night. Her cabin was lit softly from within, the golden glow spilling onto the snow-covered ground. I hesitated at the door, my hand hovering over the wood. Then I knocked, the sound sharp and final. Beth opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and cautious hope. "I am done running," I said before she could speak. "If you are willing to take a chance on me, then I am all in. No excuses. No holding back." She stared at me for a moment, her eyes searching mine. Then she stepped aside, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "Come inside, James," she said softly. And for the first time, I knew exactly where I belonged.